Lucky Luke is a well-known Belgian comic book series by Morris about a cowboy called Lucky Luke, who is the fastest gun in the Wild West. So fast even that he shoots quicker than his shadow. In Lucky Luke the series we get none other than Terence Hill play the role of Lucky Luke. Gone is his black hair though and his iconic uniform. Terence looks like he stepped out of the movie My Name Is Nobody, something which would have worked if he still was a bit younger, as is. However, you get someone who doesn't look like Lucky Luke playing him, kinda. Originally intended as a 13-episode series, it only got 8 episodes since Hill got so depressed after the death of his adopted son that he couldn't go on filming it. The 8 episodes give a decent look into the world that Lucky Luke the comic delves into, but it unfortunately doesn't go far enough. The first episode is boring and the subsequent episodes slowly get better with better comedy and plot lines, with each episode over 55 minutes. However, it's a long watch. Terence is charismatic as usual and many of the other cast are fun characters. The portrayal of the Dalton brothers, Luke's biggest enemies in the comics, are a bit of a miss since they don't resemble the characters from the books at all either. For fans of Lucky Luke, this series will be a huge disappointment and you'll be better off watching the animated series that have been made across the decades. The best one being 75's Lucky Luke Daisy Town feature. For fans of Terence Hill, I suggest watching the Nobody trilogy instead, as that has pretty much all the elements this series has but with comedy that actually lands. Fans of westerns won't know what they're looking at, however, as this is so far from a real spaghetti or other western that it'll turn them off. Who is this for then, you might think? Well, for completionists as myself and kids, though the length of the episode might disagree with them as well. This isn't a drop-it kind of situation. It's just a shame it didn't get to its fullest potential like the Lucky Luke movie. Check that. Lucky Luke the movie is the live-action version of the classic Lucky Luke story Daisy Town, featuring Terence Hill in the skin of the iconic Belgian-made comic book cowboy Lucky Luke. Lucky Luke, who still shoots faster than his shadow, rides into Daisy Town and quickly deals with all the scum and villainy that has been tormenting the little town for a while now. Together with his talking horse Jolly Jumper, he becomes the sheriff. The Dalton brothers, however, loosely based on the real-life Dalton gang, have other plans and decide to strike a deal with the surrounding Indian tribes to get rid of Luke and take over Daisy Town. This movie predates the series that also featured Terence Hill as Lucky Luke and has the same cast for the most part. The movie, unlike the series, however, lands the comedy that is featured in the comic books way better. Slapstick fights, inside jokes, anachronistic mentions are all part of this movie a lot better than they were, or would be, in the series based on this film. Terence Hill also feels more into his role, which in retrospect is understandable, as I have read that the series was stopped prematurely due to Hill's depression after losing his son. In comparison to the series, this stands way above in quality and I would very much recommend watching this film instead. Seeing it still veers too far away from the source material, however, I would be remiss to say that this is still not as good as the animated films and series or even the comics. Terence Hill's charm, however, and the humor depicted in this film saves the film, however, and makes it a fun romp for the whole family to see. Check that. Another Lucky Luke movie, you say? Yes, this time a 2009 French version of the iconic comic book character, and despite them nailing the look and feel of the comic book, it's quite different and pretty much hated by the fans of the comic created by Morris in 1946. I found this modern style quite well done. Lucky Luke didn't act like I imagined him acting, but I must admit that it's been 30 years since I read the comics, so my memory on the intricacies of the character elude me. Jean Dujardin looks the part though, even though his version of Luke is a lot handsomer and muscular than the cowboy from the comic. His iconic uniform with white hat, yellow shirt, black vest and blue jeans is great. However, great too is the near comic book look of everything, a little bit off and often surreal, which adds to the silly stuff that happens across the movie. What works well is the shooting. Luke, being the fastest gun in the West who shoots faster than his shadow, shoots at lightning speed in this film, often unseen to the eye, which makes it quite spectacular. In this film we get a background to Lucky Luke, His parents got murdered and he returns to Daisy Town after the president asks him to get rid of the scum. Arriving there he meets Bait Poker, who is pretty much the kingpin of all the criminals in town. The plot of course thickens as the movie progresses, and great icons like Jesse James, Billy the Kid and Calamity Jane, who also popped up in the comics, appear. Around the midpoint however the movie gets a bit boring, though it does pick up at the end a little bit. Alas, not enough. Ultimately where this movie fails is where a lot of comic book adaptations fail. They want to make it a little bit too edgy. Luckily, unlike many Hollywood depictions, they didn't change the look of the characters, but everything is a little bit too serious regardless of how silly a lot of the action and comedy is. In a way it made me feel like it was a parody, much like the pornographic Lucky Luke bootlegs that were around back in the day. And yes, that one also shot faster than his shadow, although I don't know if that was a good thing in retrospect. Once again, Lucky Luke fans should stick to the comics and animated series and films and only watch this if they want to see a kind of Elseworlds version of Lucky Luke. For others this can be a quite enjoyable movie that can act as a gateway to the comics. Beware though, the comics are a lot better, and a lot less serious. Check that. Studio 666 is a 2022 horror movie with none others than the Foo Fighters. You know that band with famous songs like Monkey Wrench, My Hero, Best of You and many others. You might not know that these are not actors. Well, you will know when you see them trying to do that in the movie. However, Studio 666 brings the story of Dave Grohl and the gang wanting to make their 10th album. They want to make it special, so they decide to go to a certain house where a horrific accident happened the last time someone recorded an album there. They discover a special sound in that place, and later on strange and horrendous things happen. Studio 666 is a typical haunted house/demonic horror movie mixed with some dry comedy where of course music plays an important part. Dave Grohl by far is the best actor of the bunch, but all the other band members really don't have the chops. This makes the whole thing even more unintentionally funny, as many of the lines are dropped like Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's Awesome Adventure. The story in itself is fine, though extremely cliché / copyright, but seeing Dave Grohl and CO go through some pretty neat killings is a pleasure. Combine that with the humor and the novelty of it all and you have a pretty enjoyable horror comedy you should definitely check out. Check that. The Pretender is a mid-90s television series and 2 television movies about Jared, a boy wonder who got incarcerated and tested on his whole life by a mysterious organization called the Center. He escapes and tries to find the truth about the Center, his past and his parents by being what is called a pretender. A pretender is someone who can be anyone at any time, not by morphing his body but by using his intellect, emotional intellect, street smarts, psychology and others. During the course of the season he helps people in need by becoming a pretender and solving their predicament, all while being pursued by the Center in the form of Sydney, his caretaker during his stay at the Center, and the quite feisty long-legged Miss Parker with whom Jared has a bit more of a complicated relationship. Later seasons add new pursuers to the list, slowly weaving a web of intrigue. The show follows the standard episodic perp of the week mixed with a serialized plotline of the mystery of Jared's past and all the secrets the Center holds. The beauty of The Pretender is that every week feels fresh due to him being a doctor the one episode and an airplane pilot in the next. Rarely is there a recurring role he plays, although later seasons has him be more in law enforcement, whether as a cop, security or government agent. Together with the 3 characters mentioned before, we have Broats, who acts as a sort of comic relief against the strict, and quite frankly extremely attractive, semi-BDSM nature of Miss Parker, who is a nutter badass and one of the many prime examples that strong female characters have existed ever since people started making stories. Parker's dynamic with Jared is like brother and sister, whereas Sydney acts as the substitute father to the parentless Jared. Broats is the younger sibling, so to speak, and as we all know, younger siblings often clash with their older sister too. Miss Parker, which leads to some hilarious episodes and interactions. Over the course of the 4 seasons we get to know the people and the true families, but I must admit that I was saddened to see that even with 2 extra movies they didn't tie up all the mysteries about Jared and the others. One would have thought at least that more things would be tied up in the 2 movies that appeared after the show ended, but unfortunately they didn't. Overall, The Pretender is a very enjoyable classic TV series that still holds up for the most part. The only problematic stuff is when we go into the 3rd and 4th season where the 90s ramps up a little bit too much. The cool intro song is replaced with a moaning woman making noises. There's a little bit more romance, a little bit more 90s people, and a whole lot of awful pseudo-techno music over many of the scenes. For people who enjoy family, mystery, a little bit of spy stuff, and a lot of pretty people in a good overall story from beginning to end, should definitely check out The Pretender. Check that. Police Squad is a glorious 1982 comedy series with the legendary Leslie Nielsen in the role of Detective Franklin Frank Drebin, a hard-boiled, good-natured cop who during 6 episodes solves some cases in quite the hilarious way. Police Squad is a parody on many cop and detective series from the past and pulls out an amazing amount of visual gags, wordplays, tongue-in-cheek comments and other comedic bits. Proverbs are taken literally, visual gags are spread out across the scenes, situational humor, and all is done straight-faced without even a flinch of a smile to be found. Police Squad is a relic from the past and rarely done well in the past decades, if even done at all. Police Squad was cancelled at a mere 4 episodes despite being critically acclaimed. Luckily for us, they released 2 more episodes and later offered us 3 movies that featured the same style of humor and Mr. Frank Drebin. Those movies are the well-known and hilarious Naked Gun movies, The Naked Gun, From the Files of Police Squad, from 1988, The Naked Gun 2A1/2, The Smell of Fear from 1991, and Naked Gun 33A, The Final Insult, from 1994. Apparently there is one in development as well by, among others, Seth MacFarlane, so let's keep our fingers crossed for that. For people who have not seen any of the Naked Gun movies or Police Squad, I would very much recommend all of them. And while you're at it, go to the Airplane and Hot Shots movies too while you're at it. This style of comedy is sorely missed, but at least we have all of these gems to enjoy them. Go watch it, fellas. Smash that. Dance your cares away, worries for another day. Let the music play, down at Fraggle Rock. Those were the words that sounded out of the TV when I watched the Fraggles during my childhood, and so they did, to much of my delight, when I watched the continuation of those shows and movies in 2022's Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock. The Fraggles returning thanks to Apple TV. Fuck you, Tim Cook. How dare you call this an Apple original? You just bought the rights to this and other childhood classics to put it behind a paywall. Original my ass, are a bunch of Muppet-like creatures who live underground and have great adventures together. Adventures that often have some kind of moral tale from which children and adults alike can learn. The Fraggles, originally created by Jim Henson, look almost exactly the same, and even the intro is a close approximation of what it was all those decades ago. Due to this, it's an awesome trip into nostalgia, and unlike many other shows and movies that are brought back these days, there's little to none current day politics injected into it. A recurring theme through this series is pollution in the sea, but the original show also had these themes inside of it, so that's not a big deal. The only true noticeable difference, besides fresher colors and some different voices, is the change of Doc. The original actor unfortunately died in 2014 and had to be replaced. The replacement, however, is an overly giddy and jumpy woman which tends to grate my gears. Not because she's a woman, because you all know Robotron likes himself some nice women, but because of the typical hee ha look at me hee attitude, which is annoying to me. For other people this might not be a big problem, nor was it for me, as she doesn't appear that much in the episodes, but it was the only downer for me. Luckily she is always accompanied by the dog Sprocket, who looks and sounds the same and is pretty funny in my book. Other characters feel and act the same as the old shows, and I didn't see any noticeable changes there. Even the goozers are still there, and of course the troll-like creatures called Gorgs and the Marjorie the trash heap that I completely forgot about. Same for those silly creatures from outer space who always have the weirdest look when Uncle Traveling Matt uses mundane items for something it's not used for in our world. For those who don't remember or know, the silly creatures from outer space are you, the humans. Overall, Back to Rock is a great continuation of the Fraggle Rock movies and series, and a delightful addition to its Jim Henson lore. It's mainly for kids, but old farts like myself who grew up with the originals will definitely find something here that is amusing. Let the music play. Down at Fraggle Rock. Down at Fraggle Rock. Down at Fraggle Rock. Check that. Murder in Successville is a 3-season crime show unlike anything else I've seen. The premise is that a famous person, mostly people I didn't know because I'm not a British guy watching a lot of British television, is dropped into a semi-scripted show without knowing anything. Everything is recorded within one day. It's added with a very neo-noir overlay and sets to make it all look like a pulp comic book. What happens is that this famous person will have to improvise his or her way through the cops and robbers' crime story that is played out around them. Of course, the actors with a script will have to derail due to the improvisations of the guest actor, which often leads to hilarious events. As with most improvisation, however, it all depends on the person and his skill in improvising. Some of the actors, mostly actresses, are not funny at all or don't go into the show well enough to make it work. There are often moments where people will burst out into laughing, which only adds to the humor of the show. It's special when you have one guy talking about dicks next to the corpse of a murdered person while there's someone almost crying of laughter. The first 2 seasons are primarily cop shows where a big dude teams up with a newbie while being yelled at by Gordon Ramsay. Yes, Gordon Ramsay. Or at least an imitation of it. Oh, I forgot to mention that all the other actors are based off real-life celebrities. So you'll get Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Boris Johnson, and many others added to the mix. An actor playing a celebrity playing a role in an improvised cop show. It's glorious for the most part, and it ended too soon and with 2 lousy filler episodes with pseudo-flashbacks that were boring as fuck. But the rest, good stuff. Go watch. Check that. Judge Dredd is a 95 movie with none other than Sylvester Stallone playing the post-apocalyptic Judge Dredd in the dystopian future city of Mega City 1, based on the immensely cool 2000 AD comic books by John Wagner and artist Carlos Ezquerra. In Judge Dredd we get a fairly accurate view of what Judge Dredd looks like, but it's all a little bit too PG and covered in 90s cheese to truly be a memorable 2000 AD movie. In the movie we follow Dredd as he stops a block war and finds himself wrongly accused of the murder of a reporter. Fleeing from the law he served for his whole life, Dredd tries to clear his name and bring the people responsible to justice. I am the law he gnarls before he mounts his fancy flying bike, being gawked at by the tight ass of Judge Hershey played by Diane Lane. Unfortunately he's followed by a comic relief character played by Rob Schneider, the whole movie making it all so much worse than it should have been. Without this character I'm sure the movie would have been a wee bit better, even though it was not violent enough. For its time, however, I think they did a pretty good job with it. It's an enjoyable 90s action movie that gets an undeserved bad rep. True Dredd fans are better off watching 2012's Dredd, however, where the excellent and brutal action movie The Raids meets the 2000 AD franchise. As it stands, however, it's a great popcorn movie, but know what you're getting into. It's the 90s after all. Check that. Parasyte the Maxim is an anime series based on the manga by Hitoshi Iwaki about a boy who gets an alien parasite inside of him that starts to live a life of his own. This alien isn't alone, and our hero is lucky that it didn't get to his brain completely, since the unfortunate beings who weren't that fortunate become human-eating killers. Our parasite is sentient, by the way, which often leads to some funny scenes as his limb gets eyes and a mouth, besides of course the tentacled blades that slice and dice through life. life. There's of course more to these parasites and this possible alien invasion, and you will all discover this during the 24 episodes they have created for you. What you get is a type of horror only the Japanese can seem to give. It's not Lovecraftian tentacle stuff, but it comes close. The parasites morph and twist in the most horrid ways, though the medium of the anime makes this a whole lot less scary than the images I saw from the anime, an anime which I of course have not read since I'm too busy watching movies and series and making videos for you people. Regardless, the anime is good, though I felt it was lacking a bit when I watched half of the season. Near the end I wasn't invested anymore and was hoping it would be over in a fairly decent way. I'm not quite sure if I got the ending I wished for, but it wasn't the worst ending I saw. There was a little bit too much contemplation near the end for my taste. Something we could have had at the beginning, but not like this at the end. Regardless of this, I was invested for many episodes, and the dynamic between host and parasite was interesting to say the least. I understand the message behind it all. The whole concept of being human, animal or other, but still, it needed a more interesting second half. There is also a live-action Japanese movie of this, but knowing most of these films suck balls, I doubt I'll ever watch it. If you are looking for something fresh akin to the, in my opinion, superior Uzumaki, then be sure to watch this. It gets good reviews for a reason. Check that.